people, I'm Doodle the Doodle Griffin, and welcome back to another episode of Doodling with Doodle, aka a series where some rando on the internet talks about things. What kind of things? Anything. And today we are talking about cars, although more specifically drawing cars. Well, drawing cars too. No, I don't mean the Pixar movie. What I actually mean is, automobiles, vehicles, actual cars. Though, quick disclaimer, this is not a video on how to draw cars. This is just a video of me practicing drawing, vehicles. Because it's something I don't do often, so if I want to get better at an artist, I gotta start practice drawing them, I will talk about some of the methods I used for practicing, but keep in mind this is just what I found helpful for me, and I'm not a professional artist or a teacher. Like I said earlier, I'm just some rando on the internet. If you find any of these tips helpful, great! Also, I know the title is called Automobiles, and I'm going to be drawing exclusively cars in this video, but some of the things I talk about can be applied to other vehicles as well. With that out of the way, how about you grab a sketchbook or a tablet and let's get doodling. Cars and just vehicles in general are something that I don't see often talked about in the art community. It's always straight to anatomy, which, don't get me wrong, is important. But when it comes to vehicles and cars, you don't see a whole lot, which kind of makes sense considering that most artists online typically only draw people or animals. But it's also not completely radio silent on the subject. If you look up for tutorials, you'll most definitely find some. And I'm sure if you look hard enough, you'll find other art-related things on vehicles. I guess it's just more of a niche thing than anything else. I guess what I'm saying is that when it comes to the topic on how to become a better artist, almost everyone forgets about, cars and vehicles. I think cars just generally get either shoved into the background or the still life categories of art, both of those subjects being heavily reliant on perspective, which is also an important aspect on drawing vehicles, so people just kind of leave it at that. However, I think there's a little bit more to it when it comes to drawing them. Not a lot, but a little bit. What I'm thinking of all depends on what you want to do, as an artist, and especially if you want in story too. If you are an artist who is also writing a story like me, you're gonna have to put a little bit more thought into it than just referencing the first picture that comes on Google. If you're writing a sci-fi or fantasy story, you're gonna have to do research and a lot of design work on how you want your vehicles to look, cars and vehicles to look, and how it will fit into your world. Especially if you're doing a hard sci-fi story with several futuristic technology and everything like that. Even if you don't have a fantasy or sci-fi story and your story just takes place in our world, there's still things you need to consider when it comes to your character's personality, situation, and time period. For example, if you have a rich character, who lives in our modern day world, who showing off their wealth, they're most likely going to have an expensive, fancy looking car. And now you have to look for expensive, fancy cars and do some research, especially on how expensive it is and how willing you think your character will spend on that car. And also, it can go the other way around. If you have a poorer character, then a character who might not be able to afford a fancy car or even a car at all, and they might have to take some public transportation, so now you have to look at what kind of transportation, especially the time period or area of the world that they live in, because more transportations, other types, are more common in different parts of the world than others. So there's just several factors that you need to consider, and everything can be applied that I just said can be applied to other vehicles and not just cars in general. As someone who wants to tell stories through my art, drawing cars and vehicles in general is something I'm gonna have to do. But for now, in simplicity's sake, I'm just gonna focus on cars. I'll worry about the other vehicles later. But for now, it's just gonna be for cars. Focus on specialize one thing at a time. When I first started drawing and learning to draw, cars, I thought it was gonna be something I hate, but surprisingly enough, I actually don't mind drawing cars. I think it's actually kind of fun. I know, right? An artist who primarily draws animals likes drawing vehicles. I'm just as surprised as you are. And I'm being dead serious about that. I thought drawing vehicles was gonna be something I hate, but I actually enjoyed it. Although, to be honest, anything is better than drawing realism in my opinion. But now I need a lot of practice when it comes to drawing vehicles because I am very out of practice. There's plenty of methods used when drawing cars, and a tried and true method is using the internet and referencing pictures of cars and drawing them that way. But a method on drawing that I thought was helpful is using Matchbox cars or like Hot Wheels. Now here's my reasoning. You can position a Hot Wheel car in like whatever position you want and use whatever lighting you want with like little to no effort. You don't have to scroll endlessly for the right angle or the right lighting. You can just place it on a book or something and then bam, draw it. I'm actually referencing Matchbox cars in this doodling portion of this video. However, there are some cons. Like if you're wanting to draw a specific type of car and you don't have, or you just don't have Matchbox or Hot Wheels in general, this probably method would not work because I wouldn't recommend just going out buying them because it's not worth it. It's one of those things, if you have them on hand, use them because they can be good practice, and it's really only a method really good for practice anyways. So if you have them, I'd recommend them, but if you don't, you don't need them. Now for the final artwork of this video is an art piece of a car I actually designed for a character in my story. My story takes place in a somewhat modern time similar to our world, but in a fantasy world. So some of their technology is very similar to ours. For example, their cars. The cars in this world closely resemble to the cars in our world, so I'm not starting from scratch here. However, I just don't want to copy and paste certain cars, especially if that car is for a very prominent character, and this car is also going to be somewhat prominent too, because I just don't want to take a car from our world and just like pick it up and plop it right there. So when I designed this car, I kept in mind for which character this was going to be for. This character enjoys his thrills, so I'm thinking of a fast car. He also, for lack of a better term, likes his toys. Dangerous toys. He likes weapons. I'm saying he likes weapons. So he has some edge to him. He also, a little bit, not a huge one, of a car guy. And he enjoys nicer looking cars, so he's probably the type of guy that would get upset if something ruined it. He also has a job that pays well, so he has plenty of money. And for the final thing, he's a bit of an old soul and likes older looking things. One of my favorite cars is a 1969 Ford Mustang, and I think that would be perfect for this character. Now, like I said, I just don't want to copy and paste a Ford Mustang into this world. Having Mustang just there in this world would be kind of weird. However, I still want this car to have like the same vibe as a Mustang, So when I first designed this car, I first drew a rough sketch of a Ford Mustang in Procreate. Then I turned down the opacity and made several concept designs on top of that. So I kind of used the Mustang as like a base for the final design of this car. Now, it was a little while ago since I did this, but luckily I saved some pictures of the process. This first picture having all the concept sketches I came up with, and the final design being the biggest one and also like in the dark line art. Here's the same one, but the final one being in color. And the last picture is the rough sketch of the Ford Mustang being on top and the final car design on the bottom. But there we have it, folks, the finished art piece. I like how the design of this car turned out, especially since I'm not particularly great at drawing vehicles, and I think it actually turned out pretty well. And I think it also fits my character pretty well. And if anybody's wondering who the character I'm talking about in this video, his name is Question Shvadu, and he actually appears in some of my animations I made, so if you check out my shorts page, you'll probably see him in some of those. When I first made this video, I was thinking it would just be a quick little video about drawing cars, and it turned into a small essay on why cars and vehicles in general are important for storytelling. I would say sorry about that, but I'm not. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and comment down below your thoughts and feelings about drawing vehicles. Do you like it? Do you enjoy it? Or you're one of those people that are like, nah, it's not for me. Or if you also want to see me draw and talk about more things about my story. By the way, that's not a question. I am going to be drawing and talking about more about my story. You have no say in that, so... Anyways, I will see y'all later in the next one. Goodbye!